Konnichiwa. Welcome to Uki Uki Chat, the newest addition to our Uki Uki series. In Uki Uki Chat, we'll be talking about various topics related to Japanese language and culture. In each episode, we'll have different guests who will be sharing their perspectives and experiences on Japan. If there are any topics that you would like us to talk about or you would like to know more about, please let us know and share them in the comment section. So today we have Aya-san from the Language Center.
Konnichiwa.
Hi. And Kamimura Sensei, from Director of the Language Center.
Konnichiwa.
Owen-san from the Education Department. Hi. よろしくお願いします。はい。
Yeah, I think there's a lot of subtext or things that happen beneath the surface in Japan. So when you first go over there, you don't pick up on them. And you might think, you know, people aren't being expressive, but they're just not being expressive the way you're used to it. Exactly. And then the longer you're there and pick it up, you can pick up sort of the nonverbal signs that someone's angry or, you know, happy or nervous or...
I think so.
But it's sort of not, you know, it might not always be facial, you know, in their facial expression or in their words. They might be saying words that are not angry. But it's very clear that they're angry.
This non-verbal business is has a deep root in the culture. So as a foreigner, it's very difficult to get it, right? The non-verbal communication.
Right.
People.
Well, the other thing about Japanese culture is there's this not wanting to be direct in the way you say things, right? Which I think surprises a lot of people, or just even the fact that if, you know, a Japanese person might be saying no, but they don't actually directly say no, but you know, they're saying maybe you take as a yes.
That's a problem when the American businessmen go to Japan, is that yes or no, or what, like very vague. Yeah,
I would say along that lines, if they say, "Oh, that's a little difficult," or "That might be a little tough," then that's a no.
No, yeah,
so
I know.
in Japanese, you'd say, "ちょっと難しいかもしれない." And the 難しい is like, "Oh, it's a little difficult."
But then,
you know, but that
means impossible.
Equals
right?
no,
Right.
you know,
Exactly.
in Japanese business. But they're allowing you to realize they're saying no, and then to sort of change direction. So you're kind of. They're not directly, you know, cutting off what you're saying, but they're giving you a chance to sort of recuperate and try to a different
The
plan.
other reading.
You're kind of saving your. It's not a direct no.
Exactly.
And when people say chotto, it's always there's emotion in it, and it's the emotion you have to pick up on. You wouldn't just say chotto.
No,
Regularly.
No, exactly.
You have to be like, chotto.
That is
You have to
Chotto.
emote
And
it.
then in parentheses, I'm so sorry.
Right, exactly.
Because if you just said it,
That's like
that wouldn't be it.
Exactly.
Right, that is so
You
true.
cannot say ちょっと, you know, you have to,
I mean, it's the body language is half of it, you know,
Exactly.
or even more.
I feel like that's
So-
a really huge part
I agree.
of that.
I always
Yeah.
tell my students that when you have to say when you have to decline an invitation and you're trying to be diplomatic and sort of nice by saying chotto, make sure you look visibly uncomfortable, you know, and apologetic.
how do you
know,
make it
because-
visibly uncomfortable?
So
Like you have a pain in your side right here, and you're like, "Oh, chotto."
not necessarily that bad, but I mean, and
I've
you-
seen
you
that.
should-
I've seen someone pull that out. That's like if you're really
But how
like
do
you
you-
really
how
can't
do
go.
you-
Oh, chotto.
Not necessarily like that, but I mean, but you shouldn't be happy and saying,
right.
Yeah, you have to
you know,
act
you
the
have
part.
to,
Yeah.
but
Right.
you have to look
Right.
sincere because there's a risk, right? You know, if you are declining this particular invitation in a way, in the wrong way that hurts the other person, then you might never be invited again by
Right.
this
So
person.
we're very afraid of hurting others.
Exactly. So you do have to show that, you know, I am, unfortunately, I cannot say yes this time, but, you know, I
Maybe
really
next
wish I
time.
could. And, you know, I really wish I could join you this time. And I'm very, very sorry. And I hope, you know, you won't be too mad to invite me again next time. And all of that, you know, is included when you say, ちょっとごめんなさい。今回はちょっと
No, it
難しいか
sounds
もしれ
very
ない。
difficult even for me. Visibly uncomfortable せやのちょっと The eyebrow has to be カタカナは
Exactly.
gotta-
That's what I mean. You have to look, you know,
カタ
like,
カナは
ちょっと
But something sort of going along that is a lot of times that word is just enough to say that you can't go. But if for me, when I ask someone like, "Hey, do you want to, come to, my house? We're having a party." In America, if they were just like, "Oh, that's not. I want to know why. Like, I want them to tell. They should say, "Oh, I'm going to, my parents' house, or I have a
You have to give a reason.
I have a dinner." You
have
give
to
a
say
reason.
something.
You can't just say, "Oh, sorry, I can't go," and then let it end
you
there.
go, why?
That means like,
What are you
wait,
up
they
to?
don't like me. Then you're never invited.
I've heard
In
this.
Japan,
I've
they're
heard
just
this.
like, "Oh, chotto," and like it's
That is so
okay.
true. My-
But
yeah,
I always
my
want like
American friends
an
told me.
explanation, like, okay, but why?
Oh, that's
So
interesting.
that's something in the US you give a little more information, even if it's not the real reason. You say something,
Right.
you know, you
Even if
shouldn't
you have to
lie,
make it
but
up.
if you have to make it up, make it up. But in Japan, you can just
understand.
you can just say, oh, I have something that day, and that's the other person's not judging you so much.
I feel like a lot of Japanese expressions have emotion behind them, less so than maybe.
We might be explaining more in words,
Very, very
in
interesting.
verbal
Very
communication,
verbal,
but here it's maybe
verbal.
more of it is nonverbal. You're saying a word, but it's more your nonverbal expression and body
right,
language.
exactly. But this all the more highlights the importance of culture, like understanding.
Sure, and just both are perfectly fine. You just need to sort of,
Right.
if you're
Understand
aware
each
of
other,
both,
right.
then
Exactly.
you can understand that the other person really they want to come, but they can't. But you just it's being aware of these little differences that
agree.
can make life easier.
Like even in the lesson 1 of level 1 class, I always say, when I teach greetings, like konnichiwa and arigatou gozaimasu, you never greet someone without a bow.
Right.
You don't say arigatou, konnichiwa, sayonara. You don't do that. You always naturally your body,
Sure.
You move.
moves
Yeah.
exactly. So
Exactly, yes,
like knowing that culture part, is absolutely important. It's
Right.
just as important as knowing the vocabulary and the expressions.
Actually, that happens to a lot
yeah.
of foreign people living in Japan. They start kind of bowing naturally. When they say
Yeah.
konnichiwa, they just go konnichiwa.
Because it's all around you. The
Yeah.
funniest thing I've seen
I see.
is Japanese people on the phone where they're talking. They're like,
yeah,
they're bowing up a storm,
No,
and
I
you're like,
still-
whoa, they like can't see you, but
Right.
it's in like it's just so
Right.
natural
Yeah,
every
I
time they
still
say
bow.
the
Me too.
Konnichiwa.
Me too. I do that.
And I was like,
it's almost
whoa.
like it's insincere if I don't do it because I feel like what I'm doing, my facial expression and my overall body language, it shows on my tone. I feel.
Well, and
on my
also
voice.
it's just so totally natural. Konnichiwa comes with the bow.
Because every time you say that, you're always bowing.
Right.
So,
Exactly.
but it's
So it
funny
would
to
feel
see them on the
unnatural not
phone,
to.
and you're like, woo, like what's going on here? But yeah.
I think you kind of learn that in Japan. That
Yeah.
it's one of the
automatic.
easiest
Sure.
customs to pick up
Yeah.
without
so too.
knowing it.
I've been living here for the last 16 years, and when I'm crossing the street, and if a driver acknowledges me and stops and lets me walk, I always bow to the driver, and I'm not even thinking about it. It's just a natural
Do they
reaction.
bow back?
I can never see them against the glass.
They probably smile.
But, I'm probably. I'm
I
pretty
think they
sure
understand
are
what
probably
you mean.
wondering why I'm doing that, but it's just a natural, my completely
you're saying thank
automatic
you.
response.
Well,
so I always say
yeah.
thank you.
I think
and then
we
I go.
we replaced the bow with like a hand.
This is what I do.
because
Thank you.
yeah, you're like in the
Thanks for
same
giving me the right of way.
same thing.
And they
I see.
might respond with the hand as
Yeah.
well.
I see.
Exactly. In driving, I drove when I was in Japan, and if someone, they want to turn in front of you and you stop and you let them go, they'll bow
bow,
in their
yeah.
car, towards the
They
steering
do
wheel.
bow.
But in the US, you do the hand, the hand wave. So I think
It's just the same thing.
we're both acknowledging the same
Yeah.
thing. We just do it in a different way.
So that's it for today. Thank you so much for our first Uki Uki chat. Please stay tuned for more to come. And thank you everyone for being here. ありがとうございました。
You're welcome.
じゃあ ではまた。さよなら。
さよなら。
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 Everybody will exercise with さよなら。
そうですね。はい。じゃあ、let's do
We
it
have
the
to do that.
Japanese way. さよなら。
さよなら。
But there's another interesting thing about Japanese trains. I didn't know about when I first was there. You know, the train's coming into the stations, going. I'm standing on the platform, and then a pink car stops in front of me.
Oh, this is.
And it's, you know, it's like a full train like we've been talking about. And the pink car stops in front of me and it's not crowded. And I'm like, sweet. So I get on. Well, yeah, of course. I'm like, boom. I get on. I start looking around. I'm like, oh, there's lots of women here. I was like, what's going on? And the reason was I was getting the death stares because it was a female only car during those certain hours.
Right.
So men
Rush
are
hour.
not supposed to ride on in that car, which I made the
Even on
mistake
the
of.
platform, there's a pink line
There's
said
pink.
women only, but you
Yeah.
don't really look down on to
Yeah.
read it. So
Yeah.
especially if you're foreigners.
Yeah.
So did you try to get off and then move to the next car?
I can't say that I did. I was like, oh, let's go,
He enjoyed.
go Japan. But yeah. So,
you
but
can
then I
keep
knew for
pretending not to
I knew
notice.
for next time. But I